Yo, JD here, and we are finally back once again. I know it's been quite a while since my last video, but don't worry, with the release of F124 on the near horizon, I'll be back to making almost daily content moving forward. Not to mention, I've just opened up my coaching slots at www.coachlimitless.com, so if you would like a one-to-one 90-minute session with me on all platforms on F124 onwards, make sure you visit that. And also, if you do click the join button, you'll get access to a 15% discount. Also, you'll get to be part of my daily open lobbies, which I will be streaming upon the release of F124. Now, with that very subtle plug out of the way, I think we are going to discuss of what we've seen from F124 so far, and really just giving you my thoughts, or should we say F123 with a patch. So having watched the F124 official gameplay deep dive, along with a video that came out a couple of days ago, so there's been two videos we've seen a bit more details and insight into the gameplay. I'm going to be discussing this, giving my thoughts, giving some pros, giving some cons, but most of all, as always, I really want to hear what you think. What do you like about what you see? What do you dislike? And just for Codemasters and EA to get a general consensus on what the general feeling is going into release of F124. So initially watching this and before reading any of the comments on YouTube, what I really took from these videos was really a lot of fancy wording, marketing, and simply saying things that are more realistic, more improved, but with actually very little substance. And I think this is something we've encountered for many of the release trailers, the gameplay footage in the past, saying how much the game has evolved, saying all these fancy words, all these fancy terms, but in reality, we're basically just taking their word for it. And I think that's the whole point of the videos I've made discussing about Codemasters, F124, and even just in recent games. I think we are at a stage now in this community where we do deserve a lot more respect, and we would deserve a lot more results, because what we've had in recent years, and I think honestly, apart from maybe 2 to 3 games in the past 10 years, I don't think any of them have really been up to scratch. A lot of false promises, and a game that doesn't really feel like it's evolved, really paying £70-80 for a patch every year. And the first thing to discuss is the dynamic handling. This is something I've heard quite a few times throughout the years of how much the handling has evolved, how much the handling has changed, how they're making it so realistic. But again, next to nothing significant really does change. When ultimately, in a nutshell, and speaking to people who actually work very closely with the game, it's mainly just a tweak of the handling settings to give you a bit of a false impression the game has changed its handling model. Of course, with people being paid to give a review and under the NDA, you're hardly going to expect something negative or critical. I really hope we do see a significant refresh from playing the beta, or at least the first version of the beta. I know I wasn't alone in being quite disappointed of what we encountered. I even heard someone say that they actually loaded in the wrong handling model when it came into the F1 beta, which, if that's true, I think it's almost just as bad, because if they're not really eyeing up those details and taking things like that seriously, or attention to detail, it doesn't really give you much hope really for the rest of the features or the game itself. So for me, a true upgrade in the handling experience would be the tyre wear modelling, the tyre temperatures, similar to how it was in F1 2018, where you could easily push over the limit and you actually had to purposely drive a little bit slower to be the fastest overall. I feel the force feedback, the forces for your wheel actually need to change depending on the weight of the car, when the tyres actually go off, something we actually had far more on the likes of F1 2012 and even F1 2013 back in the day. Because again, I think in recent years, I just feel like the handling values have just been tweaked to give the impression the handling model has drastically changed, but then labelled as something far greater than it actually is. But again, let me know your thoughts on this. And you could say EA and Codemasters have done exactly that by saying the tyres have a new thermal model. But again, very similar claims were made in F1 23, F1 22, saying that the dirty air would significantly make you compromise, yet actually staying behind drivers seems to have been far more beneficial in almost every way so far. The aerodynamics has supposedly undergone a radical change, with the term that Codemasters have used, computational fluid dynamics by using a virtual wind tunnel, and all sounds very fantastic. But again, with actually no substance and evidence this has actually been implemented or even works, we simply just have to take their word from it. And from recent games, I think the community again needs to be respected far much more in this aspect. And I don't think people are being fooled anymore. When I did look at the YouTube comments of the latest videos after I had my initial impression, you can see the majority are really feeling the same thing. Just kind of the arrogance of this company, thinking that they can just say some fancy terms, saying we've changed this, saying we've changed that. But actually, and I think a comment really just struck me well, and something I thought of myself when I was watching it, if you didn't notice the HUD, if you didn't notice maybe tracks like Qatar, things like that, the engine sounds, would you actually be able to tell this is a new game? For me, I think it would actually be very, very difficult, and I think that actually speaks volumes of where we are right now. Because again, looking at the actual gameplay footage, without seeing the engine braking feature, the new HUD, which many people do have opinions about, I think it would be very hard to tell that this is a new game, and begs the question, is it worth the £80 upgrade, which at the moment feels like it's more of a patch upgrade. If you've been watching for a while, you probably aren't surprised that this video is being quite critical, but I actually have been for almost the past 10 years. I simply think the games have not evolved anywhere near good enough, and from the official F1 game, we should be expecting the best in almost every department. But moving into some positives, because I don't want this to be all critical, and hopefully this is constructive. I'm not trying to trash the game or anything at all. I think some of the positives are that the sense of speed does seem to be a little bit better, especially being on board, and something we've certainly lacked for a while, especially in a cockpit cam. For me, just looking at the footage, it definitely feels like you do have that little bit more sense of speed element. Also, the bouncing effect, or I forgot the actual term what it is, but the bouncing effect seems to be a lot more noticeable, more realistic. Qatar does seem to have quite a big track update. It looks very different to how it was in F1 23. But sadly, the others, things like Spa, Silverstone, and many other tracks, don't really seem to have changed too much. I think another thing that people pointed out was the engine sounds, the downshifts, upshifts. Yeah, I'll let you decide what you think about that. But overall, let me know what you think of all this footage, what you've seen so far, what you like, dislike, and really the general feeling you have moving into F1 22. Really, in conclusion for me, which you're probably not shocked about, is that I've been quite disappointed at what we've seen so far. And really, the ultimate crux of it, could you actually tell it's a different game without this HUD and these engine sounds? I think it would actually be very difficult to answer. And again, does this feel like a new game? It looks very, very similar to F1 23, F1 22. No, the MFD is exactly the same. The graphics are exactly the same. Yeah, I think a lot more needs to be done, and these are just kind of surface level issues. Hopefully, if the game was running behind the scenes quite smoothly and well, that's kind of what I want at this stage, because we haven't got a new game engine. It's already been confirmed now. Probably not going to get it until F1 2026, so yeah, fingers crossed that we do have a better experience on this game. Make sure you check out Coach Limitless for coaching with me, and I will be catching you very, very soon. Peace.